We are live.
Hello and welcome to our brand new show, the GSA Podcast. I am your host Moinul, and I have two very special guests from Canadian Federation of Students Ontario, Kayla Weiler, National Executive Representative, and Jina, Ontario Graduate Caucus Chairperson. Thanks for coming within your busy schedule. I know you are busy with Lobby Week. So how are you both are doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
Likewise, thank you for having us on the show.
You're welcome. So let's dive in directly to our conversation. Dear audiences, please type your questions in the comment box if you have any questions about our conversation. So let's go to our first question. It's to you, Kayla. So tell us more about the Canadian Federation of Students at the national and provincial levels.
Sure. The Canadian Federation of Students is Canada's oldest and largest student organization. So it was formed in 1981 with the goal and purpose of connecting students across the country to fight for a better and more public education system for all. So we represent 350,000 students in Ontario and 530,000 students across Canada. So we represent students at colleges, at the undergraduate and graduate levels, as well as domestic and international students. We're actually celebrating our 40th anniversary of being a student organization. So that's a really great celebration to, be celebrating, especially during this pandemic. And part of the main pillars of the organization is both campaigns and services. And we have a longstanding campaign for a universal education system that has better public funding. And it's promoted with our new campaign entitled Education for All. So I'm excited to be part of your podcast and talk more about the work of the Canadian Federation of Students.
That's very good to know, Kayla. What are your duties and responsibilities in Safest Ontario? Can you just say it in short?
Sure. So part of my role, I'm the national executive representative. So I sit on the national executive to represent the province of Ontario. So that's where I, speak on behalf of the Ontario member locals of the CFS. And so I work to connect the campaigns and services with each of the member locals with the larger organization. On day to day, I do outreach and campaign work on campuses, which looks different during the pandemic. But I also speak on to the media on post-secondary education issues.
Thank you, Kayla. Let's go back to Gina. So what are your roles and responsibilities as a Graduate Caucus chairperson?
Yeah, so as the Ontario Grad Caucus chairperson, my responsibilities are to really oversee the caucus as a whole and try to develop various programming and carry forward some of the campaigns that are really tailored for graduate students and their needs.
Thank you. So let me tell more about the campaigns and services provided by Canadian Federation of Students.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was talking about how, we have 40 years of experience of being, a student federation for students. So that also includes 40 years of campaign experience. So we have campaigns about education funding, so education for all, fairness for international students, as well as my favorite campaign, which is the anti-corporatization of campuses run by the National Grad Caucus. We also have equity-seeking campaigns that looks like the United for Equity campaign, No Islamophobia, and as well as Consent is Mandatory. And we also have information and education campaigns and different toolkits. So for example, we have we have the anti-racism toolkit, which can be found on the CFS website as well. All the campaign materials are available in both French and English, and we can help adapt each campaign for every students' union and every campus. So we also have many services because being a student is, it can be really expensive with the high tuition fees that students pay. So we have different services that help students save money. So we have a national student health and dental network that connects students' unions with health insurance provider. We have the Ufile, which is, filing taxes for free. We also have the ISIC card, which is the International Student Identity Card, which is an internationally recognized discount card for students. And it also shows your proof of student, which is great if you are over 25 and you are seeking those student discounts, as well as the Ethical Purchasing Network to help students' unions bulk buy ethically made materials. So there's a lot of campaigns, there's a lot of services, but we're, have all of the campaigns and services to help students and make their lives better.
Wow, these are very broad range of services. So back to you, Gina. So what are the roles of Ontario Graduate Caucus inside CFS?
So the OGC unites more than 50,000 graduate students in Ontario. And really the purpose of the OGC is twofold. One, to promote the interests of the graduate constituencies to the provincial government and all other external authorities whose jurisdiction affect graduate student affairs. And two, really to act as a forum for the exchange of information and ideas between Ontario member associations to really promote the interests of graduate students.
Okay, so if any of the graduate students at Brock or any university want to contribute in the CFS, what should be the first thing to do? How to get more involved in CFS?
That's a really great question. We would encourage engagement and participation by connecting with your fellow Brock executives and really sharing your opinions and comments. We have our standalone meetings, and these are the spaces where your executives or representatives will have the opportunity to really discuss the issues that matter at Brock. Chris and Moinul, you have done great jobs already to really advocate for the Brock graduate students' needs, but it's always really nice to get in touch with the fellow students because it's quite possible that there are concerns that may go unnoticed. Another really quick thing that you can do to really engage yourself is to follow CFS on social media to get the latest updates and news from the Federation.
Anything to add, Kayla, to that?
I just wanted to, everything that Jina said is so great. Maybe I'll also add that you can sign up for, our Nation Builder listserv. If you go to the CFS Ontario website, we have the Education for All emailer tool. And if you click take action to email your MPP on the campaign, you can select to have your email included into our email listserv. So if you're looking to get those updates about campaigns, that's another way you can share your contact with us.
That's very, very good to know. Thanks, Kayla and Jina. So dear audiences, if you have any kind of questions regarding CFS, please type in the comment box and we will take it back to Jina and Kayla and they will answer those questions. So let's move on to the next question. It's about the steps taken by CFS in the COVID-19 situation. As we already know that COVID-19 situation have put it in a lot of crisis situation and a lot of challenges to students overall in both undergraduate and graduate level. So what are the steps CFS taken to make it up? Yeah.
Maybe I can start. I can start by talking about when the COVID-19 pandemic, when it first started about almost a year ago, we had immediately started working on campaigns to support students and using creative tools and ways to get our messages out to decision makers. So whether that is people who work within the government, our members of parliament, as well as different, decision makers at our institutions. So we had, tools such as tweet your MPP, as well as email your MPP on our websites. to ask for, many different things, such as, pass-fail grading for undergraduate and college students, as well as support for teaching assistants who are oftentimes grad students who are having to fulfill extra roles with online learning. We also were calling on the government, both provincially and federally, to provide supports for students. And what we saw was that both the Ontario government and the federal government, they froze student loan repayment last summer. And they also froze the interest on the student loan repayment for that period of time. We're still calling for an additional freeze to student loans, since students are still heavily affected by having to pay back their student loans, especially during a pandemic, especially in the middle of your grad studies, if you've hit that end period of the grace period for your OSAP loans. And we also had a really great and really awesome win federally, where we saw the introduction of the the Canadian Student Emergency Grant. And we saw that the federal government had committed $9 billion to students, which is the largest ever investment in the Canadian history towards students. So that was a really great thing to see, but we're going to continue to call for better supports for students, better supports for particularly grad students who play so many different roles on campus, because there's a lot of gaps that are still existing. So we're excited to continue to do the work.
If any graduate student face any challenges in COVID-19, if they have any opinion, they want to send it to government or CFS, how can they reach to CFS?
Yeah, for sure. You can, contact through your students union, but also myself and Jina are great contacts as well. We can share our emails and contact for folks to get in touch. What we do if we receive, student stories, we're kind of a cool channel to get your student story to your MPP directly, or to your administrator, or to whoever is the decision maker. Especially international students. We're currently collecting international student testimonials. So if you would like to share those kind of things with us, like our information, you can find a contact email on the website, but as well, I'll share my contact information with Moinul as well.
All right. I'll forward them those to the graduate students as well. Thank you, Kayla. And another very popular movement last year was Black Lives Matter movement, and we already know that there were a systematic racism going on, not only to black people, and also there are like South Asian, those people are getting discriminated as well. So what are the steps taken by CFS regarding that?
Maybe I can start with this one. So the OGC specifically, we've been trying to connect with union executives to discuss some of the limitations that may be obstructing participation as an open dialogue. So although this isn't really like specific to, the COVID-19 question or the Black Lives Matter movement, it's really an open-ended question to ensure that we're really capturing the various concerns that are all related. So for example, we've heard from locals that there is a lack of engagement, especially during the pandemic, and it's really difficult to hear about their concerns and try to really advocate for them on campus. We've also heard that there's racism issues on campus with respect to, campus policing. And so you can see how all of these things are interconnected to the concerns of the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement. So really at OGC, we're trying to identify these key issues that various locals are facing and trying to collect the information and trying to really identify common themes to create key recommendations to move really forward together.
Thanks, Jina. Kayla, do you want to anything add?
Sure, I can talk a bit about how, so at the Ontario Executive Committee, so that's like one representative from each member local of the CFS Ontario. We have struck like a police-free schools working group where we're having conversations about the best methods to, really talk about the issues of police or policing on campus. So, special constables or campus community police or security, because we've heard a lot of stories from students about racial profiling within these policing services on their campuses, especially in the fact that, a lot of students access campuses late at night, they or early in the morning to conduct some research. A lot of students live on campus. They also work on campus. So these should be safe environments for all people. And the fact that, racialized students don't feel safe on campus with police is a real major issue. We also supported the All Out September 30th student strike. It was inspired by the scholars strike that had happened at many different universities across the globe. And so we were able to support and uplift the messages of that strike. And it was great to see that, there is amazing BIPOC student leaders in the province, and these are the people who are leading the movement. So it's important for, people to listen and take the lead from the people who are from the communities that are affected by racism. So that's something that we're working on currently, and we're looking forward to do more projects in relation to Black Lives Matter and dealing with racism on campus.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get a success on that as well. Let's talk about some other recent successes of CFS other than Black Lives Matters and COVID-19.
So I can start with this one. So I mean, especially when COVID hit, Kayla had mentioned the toolkit. The OGC and the NGC also collaborated to send out a letter to the provincial government, the federal government, as well as university administrators, really asking for 3 key things. And these key things were like tuition waiver for graduate students, academic progression and time to completion extension, and extension to scholarships by the tri-council agencies. Some of the other things that we were successful in, I think that we could all understand that during this pandemic there are limitations on what we can do virtually, right? But Kayla and I, over the past 2 years, we've tried to really engage with other organizations. And one thing that we've really tried to focus was attending CAGS, the Canadian Association for Graduate Studies. And it was really nice to kind of see where grad studies was headed during this pandemic this year. And also just lastly, we're trying to slowly compile, again, the information on the needs of grad locals across Ontario, really trying to, again, hit those really key things on what we should focus on for the next year.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Jina.
I want to say I've greatly enjoyed working with Jina, especially about CAGS, because it's been a very interesting, for me, is like I didn't study, I've never been in grad studies. So coming from the undergraduate perspective and diving into the world of grad studies has been really interesting and amazing to work with Jina on. I think another recent success of the CFS that I really want to talk about is in November of 2019, and turning into 2020, we had a major legal win. So the Canadian Federation of Students and the York Federation of Students took the Ontario government to court over the policy, the Student Choice Initiative. And for folks who don't know, it was a policy that allowed students to opt out of their campus services and their students' unions, which goes against the referendums that students had voted in to set up these levy fees on campus. So it was a policy to try to defund students' unions and the many great services that students' unions run, such as food centers, mental health supports, supports for survivors of sexual violence, among so many other great campus-based groups. So it was really important for us to challenge this in court, and it was a unanimous decision, and we won. So it was great to see that these policies that were put in place to harm students was actually, something that we thought needed to be challenged, and we were really successful. The legal challenge continues, and it continues on since the Ontario government is appealing the court decision. But I think just to talk about it a bit more too, like the panel of judges at the divisional court ruled unanimously in favor of our first argument. And then there was 3 arguments that they didn't actually technically need to rule on because our first argument was strong enough to declare a win. So I think that is really cool to see. And, having students talk about the autonomy of students' unions. We don't need a government to tell us and to tell students of how to run and how to operate. It's a great success for many of the different campus services that were threatened to be closed because of this policy. So that was a really great win to see among so many of the other great wins that students have been fighting for over the past 40 years, if not longer than 40 years for students.
Yeah, that's a great win, I must say. Another thing is there was a campaign going on about the Ufile, like students can do the Ufile for free if they use the code provided by CFS. So I think many of the graduate students doesn't know about it very clearly. So can you just please emphasize it, like how can they like get this service for free?
Sure, I can talk about it. So the Ufile service is free for all members of the CFS. So every Brock graduate student has free access to this service. So when you go onto Ufile, or you can access Ufile through the CFS FCEE website, where you click to access Ufile, and it will ask for you to enter the access code CFS 1981. And this will help allow you to use the service for free. It's typically like $20 to $30 for non-members of the CFS to use the service, but it's free for members, and it also includes dependents, which is really great because sometimes that adds additional costs. The service is available in both French and English, and it's also available in every province in Canada. So for folks who might live in Quebec or in Manitoba or anywhere else, you can also access the service.
If any student face any difficulty to do the Ufile by themselves, then is there any way CFS can help?
Yes, totally. We have a services coordinator in the national office, and you can find their information on our website.
Okay, that's very great to know. Let's move on to our next topic. That's the mental health toolkit. Already Jina mentioned about like how is the progress now about the mental health toolkit, and how can students use this service?
Yeah, so for the folks that may not be familiar with the mental health toolkit, it was the National Grad Caucus of CFS, the forum to engage graduate locals across Canada, who engaged in a 1-year research project to develop this mental health toolkit. And the really great thing about this toolkit is that it really tries to aim to equip graduate student communities to evaluate and improve the state of their mental health and well-being. So the toolkit nicely opens up with an introductory chapter of what the toolkit is about and how it's used. It then elaborates on evaluating mental health at your institution and provides various tools. And then it ends with different resources on community and self-care practices. And so this toolkit is free, and it's available online for all graduate students.
Thanks, Jina. So yeah, dear audiences, if you have any questions, I am mentioning again, so please type it in the comment box. So I will pass it to the guests. So my next question is about the Ontario Lobby Week. So right now the Ontario Lobby Week is going on, and I am also participating there. So what are the things, what are the recommendations we have this year?
Sure thing. I can talk a bit about that. So every year in February, March, before the Ontario budget, we host an Ontario Lobby Week. So it's delegates from across the province to meet with members of provincial parliament to lobby them about our recommendations. So this year we have 5. Our first one is calling for a freeze on OSAP payments at 0% interest until the pandemic is over. And we define when the pandemic is over to be when every student has access to a vaccine at no cost. We think it's really important the fact that, students are really struggling during a pandemic. And the last thing that we should be worrying about is paying back our OSAP payments. It's an undue burden for the fact that, it's something that is not an urgent necessity, such as, paying your rent, paying groceries, paying back other bills, supporting your family, especially during the pandemic. So we're calling on the provincial government to propose a moratorium, and they have previously, so they could totally do this again, and have a moratorium on OSAP payments until until the pandemic is over, until people feel safe again and can actually access those jobs that are unsafe to do so right now. Our second recommendation is a 25% reduction in tuition fees every year for the next 4 years. And it's to work towards the progressive elimination of tuition fees for all students. It's a way for students to be able to, better afford the tuition, but also ultimately lead us to a system of publicly funded education. We see that tuition fees since, the early 2000s until 2018 had increased by 3 to 5% every year for domestic students. And that, has made education extremely expensive. A lot of people can't afford, $10,000 or more every year for their tuition fees, especially during a pandemic, and especially for the fact that a lot of jobs on campus that students normally have are just simply not available. So having the 25% reduction over the next 4-year period would bring us to a system that is publicly funded. Because we're calling for the reduction, but we're also calling for that tuition funding or the tuition fees to be replaced with public government funding. The third recommendation is for the province to immediately reinstate Ontario health insurance plan to all international students. So international students are currently not eligible for OHIP, and it's had a major effect on students' health. It's also led to a lot of precarious situations for international students, where they have no choice but other to go to the emergency room, because their private health insurance is not accepted at every medical clinic. So it's created a lot of health problems for or just access to health as a major issue for international students. And we see that preventative care is better than reactive emergency care. And so having that OHIP is fundamental for our general population's health. Our fourth recommendation is that the government should eliminate differential fees for international students. Not only are international students paying for private health insurance in a province of Ontario, but they're also paying 3 to 5 times more for their education. So this looks like tuition fees into $30,000 or more. This is not fair for the fact that international students are in the same classrooms, they have the same assignments, same faculty, they have the same research labs as domestic students, yet they're paying so much more. So it's just simply not fair. And our last recommendation is for the government to immediately repeal the Student Choice Initiative and stop pursuing the policy for the fact that it has disastrous effects for campuses, for students' health and services, as well as the many different services that students' unions and students' associations offer. So that's my summary of the 5 recommendations.
Thanks, Kayla. And in last few days, I'm sure you met with few MPPs already. So as per your observation, what are the impressions of them, like how they are taking those 5 recommendations?
For sure. So we're by the end of this week, so by tomorrow, Friday, we'll have had over 50 meetings with members of provincial parliament. So that's really great to see. And so we meet with members from all different parties. So it's a mixed reaction, but the one recommendation that is the most popular is the moratorium on OSAP. It's happened before, it can easily happen again. And people are really, really interested in OHIP for international students. There are a lot of members of provincial parliament that didn't know that this access to healthcare was such a large issue. And so it's exciting to see, who could be champions of this issue at Queen's Park. And I'm really hopeful that international students will be included into the OHIP plan sometime soon again, because they previously were in Ontario in the 1990s. So we've done it before, we can totally do it again, but especially during a pandemic, especially during a health crisis, it's more important now more than ever.
Yeah, I completely agree with all 5 of the recommendations, and especially the OHIP, like why they pulled it up, not very sure. And as students, they should like have the access of it, obviously, because students are also paying the tax money per year. So I can see in the Facebook there is a comment, Daniel with their wall saying well done. So thanks, Daniel, for your valuable comment. Please stay with us and watch our rest of the conversation. So I have one last question that is about your personal goals in CFS. So and what are the achievement you personally gained so far? So Jina can start with that.
Sure. So one thing for me was keeping up to date data collection. So as a scientist by training, I am all for evidence-based decision making, which means that in order to make informed decisions, we need the appropriate and necessary data. And without this data, it's very difficult to make strategic and informed decisions on, what to do for the next step. So that's been my personal goal for the OGC.
Thanks, Jina.
One of my goals throughout my term has been to work more with the OGC, because I do think that graduate students have such a unique reality on their campus. I love the campaign of Students and Workers United, and it's the best represented by grad students. An additional personal goal of mine was to really take on the Student Choice Initiative legal challenge. I was from the University of Guelph Students Union, and so heard the announcement. He was elected in my role, and then within my first month we had announced the legal challenge. So it's been really great to see the start of it and how it continues to progress. And it's really been amazing to talk to media about the Student Choice Initiative, especially student journalists and student media, since I feel like personally they've told the story the best, because they have that direct experience of what it's like to be a student levy group on campus, but they also see the other groups that they interact with on campus. I've been really lucky to be able to do outreach across the province. So I've been to Windsor, I've been to London, throughout the GTA, and as well as the Sault Ste. Marie. That's the farthest north I've been, but I haven't yet been to the Brock campus. So I hope to come sometime soon after the pandemic. So those are just, some of my goals were to do lots of outreach with students, take on the legal challenge, and talk to media. It's been really cool. I've done media in every province of Canada so far, just not in French. I don't speak French, but other than Quebec, actually, no, I have done a media interview in Quebec, but so that's been kind of a fun little personal goal, is to speak to the media about post-secondary education.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing your goals. And yeah, obviously you are most welcome at Brock University, and we are seeing for a long time in online through virtual screen. So if the pandemic situation goes better, then yeah, please come at Brock University and we'll definitely meet, and the campus as well. So we are at the very end of our show. So please share any last words or thought to the audience.
So I just want to thank you, Moinul, for hosting this podcast and having us to chat about CFSO and OGC. As a grad student myself, I know that sometimes we feel very much isolated as graduate students. I think more so during the pandemic. But I hope that everyone is really trying to focus and practice self and community care, and just wanted to let everybody know that we're going through this together, and just to really take care of yourselves.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think I have just a quick announcement, is that the Student Choice Initiative appeal trial, so it's going to be heard at the Ontario Court of Appeal, will be March 23rd and 24th. So we really want to create a buzz around the Student Choice Initiative and how harmful that policy is for our campuses. Yeah, we encourage people to stay tuned for more details about events coming up around the legal challenge. But I also will say thank you so much. I love talking about the CFS. I love talking about grad students. So I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm excited to see, what's going to happen next. The pandemic's been really strange. It's been super weird. But I think it's a real cool opportunity that students have coming forward in the future, because when we're back on campuses, I think we're going to see a lot of great work come out of many different students and many different campuses across the province. So I want to say thank you again.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Jina and Kayla, for being on the show. Dear audience, this is your host Moinul signing off. See you on our next episode. Till then, stay safe and healthy. Bye.